My name is Jess Deal, and today I'll be telling the story of Taily Po, a story that originates from North America up in the Rocky Mountains, and it's typically told to children. In fact, it was told to me when I was in third grade by the Older Kids Storytelling Group. So it all started a long time ago in the high Rocky Mountains. There was an old fur trapper named Old Jake, and his three dogs, Ino, Uno, and Calico. One night, he went to bed famished. He hadn't eaten in days. He laid in bed and listened to his stomach grumble as he tried to fall asleep. He laid there for a couple hours just thinking about all the food he could eat when he heard a weird scratching outside. He called out to his dogs, but they weren't barking, so he decided to put it to the back of his mind and drift off to sleep. About an hour or so later, he heard Ino barking outside. He opened his eyes and looked around the small cabin, and there was this strange shadow crawling across the floor. It looked like a strange beast. It had something like a cat's head, a bear's body, and a really long tail. Some fear struck into him and he sat there and paralyzed. He whistled for his dogs, which only caught the attention of the beast. It started to crawl towards him, and as the moonlight shined across him from the window, he realized that this was no normal creature. He reached for his hunting knife beside his bed, and he lunged at the creature. It let out a terrible scream as Jake cut off its tail. It scurried out the door, and all that was left was this giant tail. Old Jake thought about just throwing it outside as it was weird and didn't have any hair on it, but then he thought about the amazing stew he could eat if he decided to cook it up. He finally decided he needed to eat. He lit a fire and started to make his stew, threw some scraps down to his dog. With his belly full from that tail he cut off, he climbed back into bed and watched the smoldering fire. He eventually drifted off to sleep. Another hour later, he heard more scratching outside this window, but this time it was much more intense. He called to his dogs, but all he heard were whimpers outside. He decided to go and open the door, and he found all three of his dogs had been cut open. He closed the door and ran back to his bed where he had his hunting knife, and he stood and waited. He knew the creature was coming. He couldn't tell where it was coming from, but he heard the little noise, a voice saying, "Taily Po. Taily Po, give me back my Taily Po." He looked outside the window, but there was no creature there. He had locked the door behind him and didn't know how this creature could get in the small cabin. But then a shadow started to arise out of the corner. It was the creature, but without the long tail. It said again, "Taily Po, Taily Po, give me back my Taily Po." Old Jake was terrified as he yelled at the creature, "I ate your tail. You can't have it back." The creature lunged at him, screaming, "Taily Po, Taily Po, give me back my Taily Po." Old Jake was terrified. He dropped his hunting knife as he fell to the floor with the creature on top of him. Without even knowing, he'd been sliced open through the middle, and the tail had been put back together and put back on the creature. He lay there as he started to die and realized he shouldn't have messed with this creature. The townspeople came back up to the mountains a couple days later, searching for Old Jake, but they couldn't find him anywhere. They couldn't see any sign of his three dogs, or the creature, or even Old Jake. They say that sometimes when you walk through the woods at night, you can still hear a whisper on the breeze saying, "Taily Po, Taily Po, I have back my Taily Po." Thank you. There's my story.